Our next application deals with area. So the first area problem has to do with a basketball court, and they give us some information about the basketball court, but not quite enough right off the bat, so we're going to have to be a little bit creative. So it tells me that the length of the court is 6 feet less than 2 times the width. So I'm going to say that the width is W, and I'm not going to say that the length is L, because if I have two variables, I can't solve unless I have two variables with two equations. So I'm going to write my length in terms of the width. So the length is 6 feet less than 2 times the width. So if I take 2 times the width, then I take 6 away, that should be the length. So again, I got that from here, 6 feet less than 2 times the width. That's where I came up with length. So this is 2W minus 6. We know that the formula for area is length times width. And so, my area is 4,700. My length is 2W minus 6. And my width is W. So this is kind of a hot mess right now, but I'm going to do what I can to simplify it. So I'm going to distribute to get 2W squared and then minus 6W. And again, I can't solve because it's not equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract that 4,700 to each side, or from each side. That's going to give me 2W squared minus 6W minus 4,700 equals 0. I notice that I've got a 2 as a factor of all of these. So I'm going to go ahead and deal with that so I don't have to tic-tac-toe this monstrosity, which would give me W squared minus 3W minus 2350. Now I would use my calculator to find numbers that went into 2350. So I started by using 5, and yes, it went in, but it was a giant number. And then I would try 10, etc. I'm looking for numbers that would then subtract to 3. And what I found is I did W minus 50 and W plus 47. I wanted to make sure I was right on that. Now again, I'm going to set this equal to 0 and this equal to 0. And solving my first binomial gives me that W is 50. And solving my second binomial gives me that W is negative 47. Well, I know that if I'm dealing with dimensions, that a negative value does not make sense. So the 50 does make sense, and that would be the width. To find the length, I would then plug it back here. So 2 times 50 minus 6 would be 94. And so I would write a sentence that said the width of my basketball court is 50 feet and the length is 94 feet. So hopefully that's regulation. Probably not. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Do it the exact same way. So press pause, give it a try, and then press play to see how you did. Again, I'm dealing with a length and a width. Here I'm going to let L equal the length. I'm going to use my little curvy L so it doesn't look like a 1. And I know that the width is 5 less than 3 times the length. So I'm going to say 3 times the length minus 5 equals the width. And the area is 2 inches. So if area equals length times width, then 2 inches equals length of L times width of 3L minus 5. I'm going to distribute the L to get 3L squared minus 5L, and then I'm going to subtract the 2 to the opposite side. So 0 equals 3L squared minus 5L minus 2. If you hate the L's, use an X instead. It really doesn't matter. From here, I do want to factor this and set them equal to 0. I can't factor this by finding numbers that multiply to 2 that subtract to 5 because A is not 1. So I'm going to have to tic-tac-toe this one, which we haven't done one of these yet when we've set them equal to 0. But 3L squared and minus 2 gives me minus 6L squared. And down here I'd have minus 5L. Numbers that multiply to negative 6 that's subtract to 5 would be, because again we're dealing with a difference, I would use a negative 6L and a positive 1L. These multiply to negative 6, and when I add them together I get negative 5. This would have to be 1L and positive 1, which means this would have to be 3L and negative 2. Make sure everything works out. That gives me L minus 2 and 3L plus 1. And I'm going to set each of those equal to 0. So L minus 2 equals 0 gives me that L is 2. 3L plus 1 equals 0. I would subtract the 1 and then divide by 3 and end up with not only a fraction but a negative fraction. And the fact that it's negative, we know we can discount it completely. If it were a positive fraction, I'd have to deal with it. So I know that my length must be 2, which means my width must be 3 times 2 minus 5, which is 6 minus 5, which is 1. So I would write a sentence that said that the length of the rectangle is 2 inches and the width is 1 inch.